Okay, let's talk about the rules of war for a second. Is it always illegal to wear your enemy's uniform? You'd probably think the answer is a simple yes, right? But when it comes to the United States, the answer is actually wrapped up in this really fascinating legal puzzle. So today, let's unravel it.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the basic rule of war itself. Then we'll dig into the US position, which, well, it seems to contradict that rule. From there, we'll break down the huge difference between treaty law and custom. That's the key here. We'll see how that distinction explains everything, and then we'll wrap up with why this whole legal nuance really matters. All right, first up, a rule of war. Our whole puzzle really kicks off with a fundamental question about deception on the battlefield. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? You'd probably just assume, yeah, of course that's illegal. But when it comes to international law, things are almost never that simple. The answer is, well, it's a bit more complicated. And it all hinges on one single crucial word. And that word is improper. You see, there's a long-standing rule against the improper use of enemy uniforms. Basically, it means you can't fight while wearing one. The whole idea is to prevent treachery. Seems simple enough, but this is exactly where the U.S. position creates a bit of a mystery. Which brings us to the U.S. position, and this is where we start to deepen that mystery. Because while the U.S. agrees with the principle, its official legal stance, well, it's a real head-scratcher. So the modern, written-down version of this rule, you can find it in an international treaty called Additional Protocol I. Think of it as a big update to the Geneva Conventions. And it's super clear. It prohibits using enemy uniforms to shield, favor, or impede military operations. You think that'll get a final word on it, right?
Well, here's the puzzle. The United States agrees with the principle, but it has consistently rejected this specific article. So the U.S. is basically saying, yeah, we agree with that rule, but also, nope, we don't accept this article as legally binding on us. And you have to ask, how can both of those things be true at the same time? Well, here's the reasoning. First off, the U.S. has never actually ratified Additional Protocol I. That means they never formally signed on the dotted line. The government's view is that it'll only follow the parts of this treaty that it believes reflect something called customary law. You know, those unwritten rules that countries just follow because, well, it's custom. And as far as the U.S. is concerned, this specific Article 39.2 just doesn't make the cut. And that right there, that distinction brings us to the big reveal. This is the key that unlocks the entire puzzle. Understanding the difference between two types of international law. Okay, let's break this down. On one side, you've got treaty law, like that additional protocol we've been talking about. This is a specific written agreement. It's only binding if a country actually signs on and ratifies it. But on the other side, you've got customary law. This comes from general state practice over time. It's more of an unwritten rule, and it binds all states, whether they signed anything or not. So you see the U.S. stance? It rejects the treaty version, but accepts the underlying principle as customary law. You know, here's a simple way to think about it. A treaty is kind of like a written list of house rules that you and your roommates put on the fridge. You're only bound by those rules if you actually agreed to them. But customary law, that's the unwritten rule that says you just don't leave your dirty dishes in the sink for a week. Nobody ever wrote it down, but everyone is still expected to follow it. It's just custom. All right, so now that we've got that distinction down, let's put it all together and look at the U.S. legal logic here. It's actually pretty straightforward once you see how the pieces fit. And this really gets to the heart of it. The U.S. accepts the prohibition, but its reasoning follows the path of older customary law, like the Hague regulations, not the newer treaty. So think of it like two different roads that lead to the exact same destination. So let's walk through that logic one more time, step by step. First, acknowledge the principle. Don't misuse enemy uniforms. Got it. Second, reject the new source. They haven't ratified the treaty. Third, accept the old tradition. The principle is part of customary law. And the conclusion? The U.S. is bound by the rule. It just gets there through a different legal path. And just like that, the puzzle is solved. Okay, at this point, you might be thinking, that seems like a whole lot of legal gymnastics just to end up in the same place. Why does any of this nuance even matter? Well, it turns out this seemingly small distinction actually has some pretty big implications. Yeah, this isn't about the U.S. trying to find some clever loophole to get out of a rule of war. It's actually about carefully choosing the legal authority behind that rule. It's a statement about which sources of international law it considers legitimate. At the end of the day, it's about national sovereignty and legal philosophy. And that's why these details are so critical. These fine legal distinctions are, in many ways, the building blocks of international relations. They shape how nations conduct themselves, not just on the battlefield, but in diplomacy too. It's how they justify their actions and hold others accountable.
So it all leaves us with a bigger question to think about, doesn't it? How does a nation's legal fine print end up shaping the actual realities of a battlefield? It's a powerful reminder that these rules of war, they aren't just abstract ideas. They're a carefully constructed framework where every single word and the legal path you take to get there truly matters.